2019 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ansello. Here. Mr. Broth. Here. Chairman Delahanty.
Here.
Mrs. Draw. Here. Mr. Felder. Here. Ms. Cayley. Here. Mr. Mafucci. Here. Mr. Marinetti. Here. Mr. Morelli. Here. Mr. Rockow. Here. Ms. Taylor. Here.
Okay. Will Legislator Cayley please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are two public hearings scheduled for tonight's meeting. Mr. Clerk.
Affidavits of publication and posting of the notice of the hearings on the assessment rolls of the Pure Waters District for 2020 and the notice of the hearing on the proposed 2020 Monroe County budget in the Daily Record and Rochester Business Journal have been received on file in the clerk's office.
Okay, first hearing. I will now declare open the public hearings on the assessment rolls for the Gates-Chili Ogden Sewer District, Irondequoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District, Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District, and the Rochester Pure Waters District for 2020. Are there any speakers registered for these hearings?
There are no speakers registered.
Okay. I declare these public hearings closed. I will now declare open the public hearing on the proposed 2020 Monroe County budget. Are there any speakers registered for this hearing?
We have one speaker registered. I'll call that person forward. They will have 2 minutes in which to address the committee and kindly conclude your remarks when the timer sounds. Our one speaker is Bridget Hurley. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to share with you the Children's Agenda's perspective on the proposed 2020 budget. I emailed a copy of the full report to all of you. I hope you've received it or will receive it soon, and brought for you tonight a hard copy of our executive summary. So I'm just going to quickly go through this because I don't have much time. But in terms of what we found in the budget, no big changes, no big cuts, fortunately, for programs that support children and families. There is an increase in funding for the preschool special education program that we're very grateful for because we know that program is really in crisis, and that increase in the 15% rate is going to help a lot. We're asking for another 15. We did an analysis a couple years ago, and there clearly needs to be a 30 or 40% increase in rates to make that payment equitable with what those therapists and professionals are making in other settings. So, grateful for that. Increase in child care funding, unfortunately a decrease in county contributions to child care, but some exciting new things in terms of the reduced copay and the emergency child care. Disturbing continued increase in CPS reports and foster care placements. There's been a lot of money that the county has put into preventive services, and it's disappointing that we don't see the outcome yet. We're suggesting that maybe we want to take a look at what programs are being used, what programs are being funded with those preventive dollars. Perhaps they're not the most effective programs that we could be using, and so we're suggesting a very deep look at that, and also a very deep look at some of the CPS cases to see, is there something in the way that, is there something, may not be anything related to the county, but is there some reason why there's been an increase in staffing, an increase in support, and still we're having an increase in the reports? We just need to get to the bottom of it. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. Let's just figure it out and see what we can do to fix it. I just want to share quickly with you, we also included a list of much more long-term recommendations for those of you who are going to continue in the legislature, as well as for the new administration. We would love to see the county sort of seize the authority that it has in running programs that impact vulnerable children and families in our community and provide leadership in convening. Now, I don't think we need one more table in this community around solving social issues. I do think what's missing, though, is a county-wide body that looks at these issues and tries to get us all rowing in the same direction, share data, share ideas, see if we can really get to the root of some of these very, very persistent problems. I think I mentioned last time I was here, we're a fan of using state and federal money that brings money into our community. Of course, prevention instead of remediation. Again, more partnerships, more sharing of information and transparency, and very concerned about what's true all over this country, which is that systems like Child Protective Services, juvenile justice, child welfare are inherently having institutional racism sort of baked into them. And would love to see the county sort of take on the challenge of examining the programs and identifying where there might be some misdirection of funds right now that we could correct that would remove some of the impact on kids of color. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who would like to address the committee regarding this matter, which is the budget, right? Okay. There being no other speakers on the subject, I declare the public hearing closed. Are there any speakers signed up for public forum?
There are not.
Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to address the committee at this time? Okay. I would like to introduce Robert Franklin, Chief Financial Officer of Monroe County, who is here to present the proposed 2020 Monroe County budget as it pertains to the Ways and Means Committee. We will have a question and answer period following the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. That's not the screen I'm looking at. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, 7 slides. We're going to try and keep this down to 7 minutes. As usual, I'll start with a very high-level overview of Monroe County's budget for 2020. Overall, the county's budgeted spending is increasing by about $4.9 million. It's about 0.4% compared to our appropriations from 2019. Of that increase, $2 million relates to a higher pension payment. I'd also like to review our debt service and cash capital budget in a little more detail on the next slide. This slide presents all of our bonded debt, our notes, our cash capital, and issuance costs. Slight reduction. Bonded debt service, both principal and interest, is almost flat from 2019. It is increasing by about $680,000 on $90 million. A lot of planning went into that relative flatness in bonded debt service. Bonded debt service will drop by about $1 million next year and another $9 million heading into 2022. So that should set this legislative body up and the administration quite nicely should the economy head south into a recession, perhaps late 2020 or early 2021. Turning your attention to short-term notes, you'll see a decrease on this line of about $4.4 million. The best news is that none of these notes from either year, 2019 or 20, were converted to bonds. That's a good thing. Instead, these notes were fully redeemed using the unrestricted cash within our debt service fund. Throughout the budget book, you'll see several departments with the revenue line called appropriated fund balance. I think I've mentioned this in a prior committee. Whenever you see appropriated fund balance, you'd ask a question about what that is. It's very important. Like I said last year, the debt service fund is outside the general fund, and I say that because always ask when you see appropriated fund balance. fund balance within the debt service fund can only be used for debt service, whether it's in the unrestricted portion of debt service fund or in the restricted portion, which is called our reserve for bonded debt. So in this particular budget, like 19, appropriating that fund balance is appropriate. The budget for cash capital, at least up until the current year, 2019, has been limited to the planning around our LDC dissolutions, specifically M3S and UTC, and perhaps for the replacement of a variety of sheriff's vehicles. However, as you review the current capital improvement program, and as we've discussed in other committee meetings, you'll note quite a number of quite a number of projects that are annually recurring of relatively the same dollar amount. In my opinion, it doesn't make financial sense to borrow that same dollar amount every single year. So a lot of planning went into working with our departments on holding off on that borrowing, using existing capital dollars, and working a cash capital contribution into our operating budget. This way we avoid repaying those dollars with interest. Not trying to give impression that debt is bad. On the contrary, debt can be very appropriate for larger or longer-lived projects because it spreads the cost of that particular project out over a greater number of the project's beneficiaries. And only for the period of time those beneficiaries actually derive value from that project. Very quickly, you've seen this slide in other presentations. I'm not going to really talk about it much. I came up with this slide last year. It's just a slightly different way of looking at where our budgeted dollars actually go. It's a condensed pie chart version of the data you'll see in a table on page 56 of the budget book. It has some notable talking points. First, you'll notice that employee payroll and benefits make up about a quarter of the county's budgeted spending. Really, two factors contribute the most to keeping this percentage so low. And I say it's so low. Usually, staff costs are the highest portion of any agency's operating budget. But with Monroe County, I would say that first, we're a very large county. We're one of the 6 large counties in New York State. And our workflows benefit from economies of scale relative to smaller counties. We can generate more output with a lower staff ratio. Secondly, a relatively large portion of our budget is spent on public assistance benefits, such as temporary assistance, safety net, Medicaid. That high dollar budget sort of masks the impact of budgeted dollars on payroll and benefits. I'd also say another notable point in our budget is debt service. Debt service comprises only about 7.5% of expenditures. From a financial and budgetary perspective, that's a good thing. You actually want to strive to keep your budgeted debt service under 10%, which is a general rule of thumb. That's a common threshold used by banks, the credit rating agencies, even the comptroller's office. And debt service above 10% of your operating budget makes those folks take a cautionary pause, because the higher your debt service is, the less budgetary flexibility you have should the economy head south. If I can quickly look at the county's revenues, again, this is a slightly different look at where the money comes from in our budget. This is also a condensed pie chart based on the data in the table on page 56. Property tax revenue accounts for about 1/3 of the county's revenue base. That is significant, actually. I think I mentioned this last year. Property tax is a very stable and relatively predictable revenue source for counties. Combined with our historical 98% collection rate, banks and credit rating agencies love this ratio. They view it very favorably as a credit strength. Sales tax, on the other hand, accounts for only 13% of Monroe County's revenue base. This is equally significant because sales tax is a very volatile revenue source, and it's relatively unpredictable because credit rating agencies, bankers, and investors shy away from volatility, having such a low percentage of our revenue derived from sales tax is also favorably viewed as a credit strength. And lastly, a quick comment on federal and state aid. You know, combined, it represents about 26% of the county's revenues, and we can debate whether a reliance on federal and state aid is good or bad. What is generally accepted is that once the state and federal government award funding, they pay. A couple of interesting points about our $207 million in budgeted state aid. I think you already know this. Unlike cities that receive state aid through their allocation of aid and incentives for municipalities, state aid to counties really takes the form of reimbursement, and sometimes partial reimbursement for the delivery of state-mandated programs. So when we spend $1 today, we'll get reimbursed a portion of that dollar at some future point. Going in the opposite direction, we have budgeted $182 million in required Medicaid payments that Monroe County sends to New York State. And actually, we're required to pay the state our Medicaid bill in weekly installments. So doing the math, we get about $207 million in earned reimbursements, but we pay the state $182 million, so really we net about $25 million. And I just wanted to put perspective, because it's a $1.2 billion budget. Another big piece of our pie is our charge for service and other revenue. Our enterprise funds, like the airport, the solid waste, our internal service fund, our road fund and library are represented in this revenue piece of the pie, as well as those services within the general fund that are covered by user fees. And lastly, slide 7, a recurring favorite of this committee. Sales tax. The last thing I want to comment is our sales tax revenue. For 2020, we've budgeted sales tax revenue at $158 million. That represents a $6 million increase over the 2019 budget. That's a pretty big increase budget to budget, but it's pretty much where I think Monroe County will end up at the end of the current year, after New York State withholds $3 million to make the towns and villages whole for their AIM funding reduction. What am I saying here? I'm saying that the 2020 budget of $158 million for sales tax revenue is a little less conservative than it was in the prior couple years, but it's by no means aggressive or overly optimistic. It's pretty much right in the middle of where I think it's going to be. It does account for the governor withholding another $3.3 million of sales tax for the state's AIM reductions. So that's a risk. If the state finds they need more, you're going to be on the hook for that. But on the flip side, it does account for a potential recession beginning in the start of the fourth quarter of 2020. I've kind of planned for that. It also anticipates no real year-over-year growth due to a growth in spending. So all in all, not a bad revenue estimate. Mr. Chair, that really concludes the presentation. Happy to answer questions back at the admin table.
All right, thank you, Mr. Franklin. I will now open the floor to any committee members who have questions regarding the Ways and Means portion of the budget. Legislator Baroth.
I was just deferring in case. You guys good? Okay, sorry. So, thank you for recognizing me. First, I just want to say to Mr. Franklin, thank you very much for what is I assume, your final presentation on the county budget. It was more than 7 minutes, but it was a good 11 minutes. So thank you very much for that. I also appreciate your willingness to answer all the questions we have asked in the past and are going to ask tonight. So it's very much appreciated. And again, I know it's our last one of the year, and so thank you to everyone else in the committee. I really value this committee. I value being on this committee. I think we do a lot of good work. And with that, so in response to the initial presentation, Mr. Franklin, through the chair, you mentioned that there's $2 million of the increase in the budget is due to higher pension payment. Could you describe that for a second? I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you go to the very last page, page 759, you'll see the page is titled Employee Benefits Overview. The first paragraph covers retirement. I'm sorry, I just put a piece of candy in my mouth. The last sentence of the first paragraph discussing retirement says the 2020 budget for retirement is $45.4 million. If you were to pull up the 2019 budget book, the very last page, it'd be about $2 million less.
Thank you. And I'll own up to this through the chair. I read most of this budget. I don't think I've ever read the last page of this budget.
It takes a long time to get there, Mr. Chair.
But I
find
will
that
from
hard
now
to
on. Now I
believe.
know it matters now.
Legislator Barab.
No, I feel bad about that. So my second question about the presentation. On slide 5, you mentioned that the source for this, that was from page 56 of the budget. Is there a similar source or table for slide 6, which is the total revenues, where money comes from, through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, it's really the same table as the lower part of the
Okay.
table.
Thank you, because I intend to take a look at it. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to, if it's okay with everyone, start with some general questions about the budget. If we go to page 70 of the budget, it just has to do with the Genesee Country Village and Museum. And the reason I'm asking is the attendance for this museum is down about 30% over past years from the actuals. So if you look at the actuals for 2017, 2018, it's down. But we're still giving them $30,000 per year. Through the chair, to the administration, why are we continuing to support the Genesee Country Village if their attendance is declining precipitously?
Excellent question, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure I'm prepared to answer that tonight. We'd be happy to respond in writing.
Off to a good start. Okay, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. It's a tough one. So but I am curious because that is something that is a year-on-year expense. Secondly, there's a new performance measure for the Rochester Museum and Science Center called Workforce Development. Do we know what that is through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, while I can't answer that question in very great detail, I do know the Museum Science Center is partnering with our Planning Development, specifically Economic Development Division, on a project for youth employment.
So we suspect it's that through the chair.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I wanted to look at fleet maintenance. And so I went through every single one of the chargebacks of fleet maintenance. Am I correct, through the chair, that if you look at all the chargebacks from all the departments, and you look at the fleet maintenance acceptance of charges, that in total, that should be 0. Is that correct, through the chair?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at page 602, fleet maintenance, total interdepartmental charges, what fleet charges back to other areas. Yes, what fleet charges back to other departments should equal 0. You do have to factor in any different revenues that fleet gets first. So it's really fleet's expenses minus like insurance recoveries, then the chargeback should add up.
Okay. I asked because I added them all up and they didn't quite add up. They're off for about $6,000. And you, through the chair, that $6,000 is about what you would expect it to be just for, I don't want to call it either fluff or would it be potentially just a misreporting? I mean, it's $4.1 million, so it's not a ton of money, but I assumed it should have been 0 is all, through the chair.
Yeah, the revenues are really more than that, Mr. Chairman. Interesting, when I look at chargebacks in the system, it really comes out, so I'll have to take a deeper dive into that.
Okay. Well, I figured you had some information I probably didn't have, but okay. If you could let me know by full ledger, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving on to the Board of Elections. I just want to ask a question, if anyone here is from the board. One of the major objectives for 2020 is, quote, expand the number of early voting centers based on voter participation and traffic patterns. Do we have an idea of what the numbers of voting centers should be and where those locations should be yet, or is that not yet determined through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, we're just checking to see if there's someone from BOE here. It's not looking promising. Through the-
No one? All right, we'll have to address that. We'll get that your questions to the Board of Elections and get back to you.
Okay. We can submit them in writing as well.
Yep.
All right, so through the chair of the administration, under planning and development, on page 262, two performance measures have been removed, one of which I don't really care about. But the other one is capital improvement programs adopted by legislature. That's been removed as a performance measure. Why is that the case, through the chair? Yeah, the other one was this one. I can get this one.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, without a rep from planning, we can't answer a performance measure question. Hey, I can answer the question on Genesee Country Museum, though.
Okay, well, we'll go back to that one. Why Genesee Country? We'll go with that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to have that one on voting, the planning and development later on, but back to the Country Museum.
The real answer why they're not getting a change in funding due to a change in attendance is I don't think any of these agencies have been changed in quite a long time. Once you change the funding for any one of these agencies, all the other agencies, plus all the agencies not funded, come out of the woodwork. So there's very little change to any of these agencies.
So it's just status quo, essentially.
Status quo, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that's good to know. Okay, thank you. Moving along. Moving over to finance. So I think we're good here.
Finance, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Under the 2019 major achievements was completed 10 hotel motel occupancy tax audits. Who was audited through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, we actually, I know who was audited, but when we do audit reports to the audit committee, we actually don't identify the specific hotels. We just call them Hotel A, B, C, et cetera.
Okay, so don't tell me if it's a secret like that. I don't mind. But what sort of hotels were audited? Large capacity, small capacity, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It's actually a rotating list. Hotels are generally audited every 3 to 4 years. They are a variety of our larger, mid, and small hotels. Smaller bed and breakfasts used to be in the mix quite frequently, like 2 to 3 each year. The reality of that, Mr. Chairman, is the small B&Bs actually run a tight ship, and our work usually results in either no tax due or a small refund. So we're only going to do one B&B every other year going forward. That's our plan.
So through the chair of the administration, so essentially then, a main purpose of this is to identify those who are not paying what they should be paying appropriately, and then getting those funds available to the county. Is that correct, through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, the deal is with the small B&Bs, it's really more about program integrity than trying to find specific, I'll call it fraud or non-compliance. With the larger hotels, the larger the hotel, the more frequent the errors and the inability to track specific exemptions, which should be substantiated according to the law.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And finally, on this related matter, so you said you identified like hotel A, B, and C. Is there a particular reason why we don't identify what hotels are audited? Is confidentiality?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I did ask that question once, and I used to know the answer, and I'm not going to come up with the answer tonight. But I'll get you an answer in writing.
Okay, thank you. So still under finance, page 145, there's an item listed as other revenue. What is other revenue?
Mr. Chairman, page 145, that really is, the biggest one is 220 grand from the county auction. You know, that's the auction of old cars, old equipment. There is 120 grand in there for our property auction and to a small extent other fines and forfeitures. There's 66,250 from our, we pay ourselves to administer the hotel tax program, so 66 grand comes from hotel tax. And then, believe it or not, there are actually unclaimed tax overpayments, which we're required to hold for 3 years, and when we can't find the beneficiary after 3 years, that money's returned to the general fund. That's about 50 grand in the budget.
Wow. That's kind of depressing, but okay. I understand, thank you. Through the Chair of the Administration, on page 146, there's a new fee entitled Unpaid Tax Publication Fee, $7 a parcel. What is that?
That's a new fee in the budget book, Mr. Chairman. It's not really a new fee. Every year, this is the unpaid publication. So on August 1st, we have to publish a list of lands with unpaid taxes, and that fee historically has been $7 a parcel, up to $7 a parcel. That was never in the budget book. It was always addressed in a separate legislative referral. I don't know why it was never specifically in the budget book. It seemed like the appropriate time to include it in the budget book.
Okay, so it's not really new at all, through the Chair.
New to the book, but not new charge.
Okay, thank you. Through the Chair of the Administration, on page 148, under operating cash borrowing volume, there's been a steady decline from actual 2018 up to 2020 by about from 60 to 55 to 50 million. How was that achieved? Or is it not achieved, it may change in the future?
Mr. Chairman, how was that achieved? That was achieved by remarkably improved financial accounting and financial budgeting within the Department of Finance, Mr. Chairman. Through better use of cash management, better budgeting, we've been able to reduce the annual revenue anticipation note from probably 10, 12 years ago, $96 million. It had been $75 million when I took over this role back in 2013. We've been able to reduce that. And Mr. Chairman, the reduction has been strategic. It could have been $50 million this year, but it's very important to be very strategic in our borrowing. So we have purposely lowered it $5 million a year in order to show predictability and sustainability to our credit rating agencies. Because if we only needed to borrow $49 million next year instead of 50, God forbid we ever have to borrow 51. Once you start increasing your borrowing, that's a red flag for the rating agencies, and there's a lot of explanations and justifications involved. So from my professional opinion, it was important to be strategic in the reduction.
So following up that through the Chair, is it fair to say then, given the fact that you don't want to be seen going back up again?
That's right, Mr.
Moving
Chair.
forward, it's not terribly likely this trend is going to continue. We might be plateauing at this level, or might we continue to decline? Given the outstanding financial measures that have been taken in the past that I'm sure will continue into the future.
Well, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, my future was a little uncertain. If I were going to remain in this job, certainly would continue to decline. I don't like to make predictions.
But
for
fair enough.
future.
In your opinion, though, it could decline, though.
Yes, Mr.
Reasonably.
Chairman.
It's reasonable.
Mr. Chairman, the biggest risk this county faces is a severe economic downturn.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, thank you very much. All right, going to page 622, so under the Finance Department revenues. I'm just going to wait a second.
Thank you. Yes, yes, Mr. Chairman.
So line 408105, which is proceeds from crime forfeiture, there was a pretty significant decrease from 120K to 50K from 2018 to 19 and 20. Why was that? Why do we anticipate that decrease through the chair?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that is a line that can fluctuate very widely from year to year. I took a look back going to 2015. So the recent range in that fluctuation was $126 in 2017 to 151 grand in 2015. So just under conservative budgeting philosophy, we held the number as you see in the budget, 53,050, which is just slightly more than last year.
Okay. And under line 410000, minor sales, what is minor sales again, and why is it up about 80,000?
That's our, Mr. Chair, our county auction, our sale of
Right.
vehicles, and that basically, I also looked at the recent past, and that's kind of like a 4-year average.
Thank you. And then finally, under this page on line 414005, proceeds from sale of assets. When you say sale of assets, is that the property you referenced earlier through the chair?
So, Mr. Chairman, that $100,000 is really more like our property auctions. If we have county property that we acquired at foreclosure, you know, honestly, we could have kept that at zero for the budget, but I was just trying to acknowledge that we generally sell property on an annual basis.
Mhm.
So I threw $100,000 in there.
So a good estimate then, through the chair.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. On page 623, so finance unallocated, under the interest earnings line 408,000, there's a drop of about $950,000 in 2019. Why is this?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, that was just a budget amount. Yeah, we're going to blow the lid off that.
So we're gonna make more than that.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so why do we write down the lesser amount? I'm just asking.
It's $3 million heading into 2020. Basically, Mr. Chairman, just to be really conservative, yields are on a slight decline. You're going to do better than $3 million.
Okay. Well, that's good
You're
news.
welcome.
Thank you. And then the same page, line 410205, miscellaneous revenue. How about that one, through the chair?
So, Mr. Chairman, miscellaneous revenue, $6.993 million. There's really a couple things in there, 3 things. Most of that is $6 million from the sale of tax liens. There's also 700 grand from our Medicare Part D reimbursement, and 293 grand related to the naming rights at Frontier Field.
How much for the naming rights?
293 grand?
Wow. Thank you. All right, so I want to go to page, I'm going to bounce back to page 153, and still with finance, because I was confused by something here. On page 153, under appropriation, under revenues, there's a breakdown, if you go to page 155, that breaks it out to rental county property, sale of tax liens, and the sale of assets, things mentioned, Medicare Part D, interest, and a few other things, or 7 items. Okay, you can find them listed on page 155. First, I want to check, is that correct? That listing as a breakout for what the other revenue is on page 153?
Page 153, other revenue, the $12,396,537?
Yes.
Pretty much, Mr. Chairman, that is the description. I do see not listed on page 155 erroneous assessments for $600,000. Well, there are a couple differences, Mr. Chairman.
But that's, am I correct to think that that in fact is put there to describe what that's supposed to be, correct?
I'm happy to give you the rundown of what comprises other revenue, $12.4 million.
Yeah, okay, I got the 7 listed, and you said it's missing erroneous assessment.
Well, let's take it from the top, though.
Okay.
Because this is really a general, this is I'm looking at page 155, and you got the real property tax, tax penalties, but then you got this paragraph at the bottom that just says other revenue.
Right.
So I'm just gonna run down the list of other revenues for you.
Okay.
So almost 4 million. You got our sale of tax liens, Mr. Chairman. That's about 6 million. That's the biggest item. I mentioned our Medicare Part D reimbursement. That's 700 grand. You know, we do get reimbursed for old LDC debt. When we dissolve the LDCs, we get reimbursement from the Water Authority, and we get reimbursement from MCC. We have $2 million in reimbursement from Frontier Field, the Civic Center garage, that's parking fees,
Mm-hmm.
shelter rents. Shelter rents used to be combined with pilot payments, but we broke it out a couple years ago, because it really is a different revenue stream, and it's not based on ad valorem. And then the last one was erroneous assessments,
Okay.
so
So-
8 items.
Two things. If I go back, and I did, to page 623, and there's a line on page 623 for miscellaneous revenue, there's no line for other revenue. Am I correct to assume they're the same thing?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Good, because the numbers weren't the same. So where would I find the other revenue back in revenues?
You just have to ask the question, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to respond. I'm sorry, is it page 623?
620, yes, 623.
Miscellaneous revenue, that's the 6.993 we just described.
Right,
Tax liens, Medicare Part D, and naming rights.
right. So that is the same thing as other revenue, right? On page 153.
It's the biggest component of the revenue on page 153.
Okay.
There's just more to it.
And where's that more to it piece? Through the chair.
Medicare,
On page 623, is it on there someplace?
yes, you'll find, Mr. Chairman, you'll find the, I mentioned the LDC debt reimbursement from the Water Authority and MCC. You're going to find that, line 406, 115, charges to other governments. Total is 1.47 million and change. I mentioned the parking fees, Civic Center Garage. Civic Center Garage is 405042, parking fees.
Okay.
But there's also 420 grand for Frontier Field parking fees there. Erroneous assessments is right above the charges to other governments. There was the $600,000 I mentioned.
Okay.
I think that was it, Mr. Chairman.
This makes it difficult to follow, but I understand from the explanation. Okay, so basically, other revenue is going to be including those 4 different lines, correct? Through the chair.
Well, other revenue in total, Mr. Chairman, has 8 components, which I rattled off rather quickly. The tax liens, the Medicare Part D, the LDC reimbursement from the Water Authority and MCC, Frontier Field, Civic Center Garage.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, thank you. Kevin just reminded me, if you go through the page 153 list and just start checking off as you find them on page 623,
Yeah,
you'll eventually see how to combine the remaining items to get to that dollar amount.
okay, I can try that.
Page 623 is just in much, much greater detail than you can fit
Okay.
on page 153.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So, more broadly speaking, so all those things go together. I now understand the components that go into the other income. But in general, from 2017 on to now, it's basically been declining pretty steadily. Went from 16 million down to, in 2017, well, actually went up a little bit in 2018, but now it's down to 12 million in 2020. Is there any particular reason for that decline, or is that just lack of things to sell?
How far, Mr. Chairman, how far back did you go?
I only went back to 2017.
I don't think there were any one-shots in 2017. One of the bigger reductions is the sale of tax liens.
Mhm.
I mean, at some point, I don't remember the year exactly, but I'm going to take a wild guess that in 2017, maybe we were budgeting 10 million, maybe 12. I'd have to check my notes from 2017. But we brought that down steadily. It was 8 million last year. It's down to 6 million this year.
Okay. So the decline in sales of tax liens is probably a large component of the decline in general.
It is, Mr. Chairman. That line probably also had some reimbursements from LDCs, but now that we dissolve them, they are somewhere else in our budget, either in, as a department revenue or an unallocated revenue.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay. So moving on, I'm going to have to move on to information services now, if that's okay. Through the chair of the administration, if you go to page 213 for information services, under performance measures, it shows that the workstations, printers, and multifunction devices installed basically dropped like a rock for 2020 from 2,500 to 750, and I went back and checked. For 2019 and 2018, that was a spike. Is that because we do the dissolution of the LDCs, basically?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, the number was so high in 19 because it reflects the PC refresh that County IS did. We all got new laptops and desktops. That's pretty much what that reason is.
Okay. For the whole
So-
county?
Right, right. So that's why 2019 is so high. 2020, we do have our MFD, multifunctional MFD. Our photocopiers to be replaced in 2020.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's the only question I had on information services. I have one question on the county legislature budget as well. Does the administration know, through the chair, when was the last time the county legislative budget changed in any fashion? I go back years, it hasn't changed.
Yeah, probably, Mr. Chairman, probably 15, 18, 20 years ago.
So, past recent memory.
Past recent memory, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a reason why, through the chair? A fiscal reason why, through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe members of prior legislative bodies wanted to increase their own budget.
Through the chair, would that be requested, who would make such a request?
Imagine, Mr. Chairman, the legislators would make that request.
Okay, so through the presidency then? Okay, thanks. Moving on, that was my only question on the county ledge. Moving on to the law department, if you look under page 222, there was a spike in 2018 actual for real estate recoveries, spousal support recoveries, miscellaneous recoveries, mortgage recoveries in 2018. Everything went up. And then it went down for the 2019 estimate. And it stays down for a 2020 estimate. And if you go back in time, it wasn't that high before. It just like spiked in 2018. Do we know why there were so many recoveries achieved by the law department in 2018, through the chair?
Through the chair, there's probably two parts to that. One is some of those recoveries are just case-specific. So, for example, $4.8 million in estate recovery means it was one or two big estates that came through that year. So those numbers can just vary from year to year, and the 2019 ones right now are just estimates. And then Mr. Franklin has some more to add.
One quick follow-up. When you mentioned that the 2019 numbers are just estimates, I assume it's based on like a historical average, through the chair?
Through the chair, that's right.
Okay.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'll just add that you're probably going to see these go down a little bit more as time clicks on. The estate recoveries mostly relate to Medicaid. Those have been trending downward for a number of years, and probably will trend downward more rapidly as the state has been taking over more and more of the community Medicaid case management. You're also seeing, with the reduced caseload, fewer liens filed, therefore fewer future recoveries of dollars.
Okay. Thank you. Had a quick question about airport field operations. On page 576, line, wait a second, 576. line 504205, commercial services, it doubled from 2018 to 2019, approximately. Why is that the case?
Generally speaking, although our airport director just arrived, generally speaking, that is largely reflective of, the biggest component is snow plowing. So we try not to vary the budget in snow plowing from year to year. We allow the actuals to be off from the budget estimate, because we don't want a budget too short.
Mhm.
But that is the largest component of commercial services, is snow plowing.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, not quite, all right. Moving on to environmental services, I had a couple follow-up questions, and I'm not sure where we landed on this before. But if you were to go back onto page 125 and look at contractual services and personnel services, they're both declining. And they've been declining pretty solidly over, the last year or so. They're down by, personnel services are down by about $1 million, and contractual services are down by about $3 million. And I'm wondering, how can that be, how can they both be declining at the same time if we're doing the same work, through the chair?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I believe in EPW, we talked about the decline in personnel services. Just to confirm, page 125, Mr. Chairman?
120, yes, 125.
Personnel services, in prior years, I'm going to suggest that the budget actually was higher than where it really needed to be, and that higher budget for personnel services was supported by higher use of appropriated fund balance. Going into 2020, we took a stab at right-sizing that.
Mhm.
If the salaries aren't going to be fully paid, and we see that over successive years of budget, then we just reduce the budget and reduce the use of appropriated fund balance to try and right-size that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, and under environmental services again, but building operations, page 598. If you look at page 598, line 504-340, rental of space, it pretty much dropped in half from 2018 to 2019. How was that achieved, through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, in 2018, so real quick, 2020, the largest component of that rental space is our 691 St. Paul Street location, 1.8 million and change. 2018, we would have had in there additional rent related to, well, at least two parking lots, Plymouth in Maine and Broad in Maine, that would have been buried in there. And Mr. Chairman, our rent of City Place across the street. If you recall, the rental of City Place was roughly 1.5, 1.6 million.
Okay, so what I'm gathering then is you're saying that there are fewer properties being rented now than were rented before. Is that correct, through the chair?
That's right, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
And you mentioned that 691 St. Paul we're renting it for 1.8 million. Is that correct, through the chair?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do you know what the assessed value of that property is, through the chair?
I'm sure that's easily obtainable, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Could you, I'm sorry, it might be, I don't know where I would obtain that, but could you obtain that and let me know what that assessed value is?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so essentially we've lost two parking lots we no longer rent, correct, through the chair?
That's right, Mr. Chairman. Those two lots were rented through the LDC that managed the garage.
Okay, and how much was that for, through the chair, do you know?
Several $100,000, Mr. Chairman. We could find the number.
Okay, I'd appreciate it, because those are good savings, and, and I realize that it's something that it's not exactly a one-shot, but it's money we're not spending on a year-on-year basis anymore. That's a good thing. Thank you. Okay. I'm shifting gears again to the Cultural and Educational Services, Cornell Cooperative Services. On page 106, if you look at the budget for 2019, in that year, we gave an additional $100,000 to the MC Cornell Cooperative Extension from the hotel motel tax. Do we know what was done with that additional funding? Will be done with that additional funding in the proposed 2020 budget, the increased monies?
Mr. Chairman, the allocation of hotel motel tax to Cornell Co-op Extension was primarily based on them increasing their educational outreach. They hired, I don't know what the person's title is, but it's like an education outreach coordinator who now works with a variety of school districts. I know a project in Webster on Schlegel Road. It's to increase their 4-H outreach and engagement with youth. So it's mostly youth-related, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I could ask a snarky question about, is that reflected in the youth support we give on page, I forget what the page number is, it's early on in the budget, but just don't worry about that. But that was a great table to go through. Through the chair of the administration, switching over to parks now, under the zoological park, I know that we've had a lot of new projects there, and we've taken on additional debt for that reason. So if you go to the, in the past, in 2017 amended, and if you need a page number, page 247. If you go in the past, the amended debt service was 0, because we didn't have anything there, but now we're up to about $5 million. And so my question is, how long will it take, to pay this off over time? Do we know how long this debt service is going to be on the parks budget through the chair?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hey, real quick though, it's just over $3.9 million assessed value for 691 St. Paul Street.
Okay, give me
I
a second.
don't know when it was last
You
assessed.
said 3.9 million.
And again, Mr. Chairman, we can have that conversation on what assessed value actually means.
Yep, assessed value. I wrote that down. Okay, thank you. So, debt service on the zoo.
Real quick about debt service on the zoo. I forget what, Mr. Chairman, what year the legislator he went back to. It might have been 2017.
Yes.
And I believe, Mr. Chairman, it was 0.
Yes.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if it really was 0. What I would suggest is that if you had the 2017 budget book, you go to the section on bonded debt service.
Yep.
That will highlight and segregate debt service associated with Seneca Park Zoo. Most of the park's debt service is showing up in administration, parks administration.
Mm-hmm.
We, in the finance office, move debt service associated with the zoo over to this page.
Mm-hmm.
The first year was a manual adjustment. We're trying to get a permanent fix in SAP. There's a lot of work in moving assets in SAP. So it systematically appears on the zoo page. And we just did that, Mr. Chairman, because if you look at the 6-year CIP throughout time, for some reason the zoo is separate in the CIP. So just to try to bring some consistency between the variety of documents we publish around here, I wanted to highlight the debt service for the zoo on the zoo's budget page. As far as how long will it take for the debt service on the big tropical exhibit and renovation project, I believe that carries either a 15 or a 20-year PPU.
So it's reasonable to assume that we're going to have this debt service at about $5 million in the next 15 to 20 years through the chair?
That's an interesting question, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if it's going to be that dollar amount. And the reason I say that is this debt service in 2020 is somewhat artificially high. It includes $3,030,000 in a bond anticipation note that we will fully redeem by the use of appropriated fund balance within the debt service fund. So that is a $3 million note
that will not be converted to long-term bonds. Meaning, this budget for 2020 is $3 million higher than it's going to be in any other year.
Right.
The other
That's good.
issue that will affect this dollar number going forward is there was some borrowing for the zoo renovation project 2 years ago. We haven't borrowed yet for it and probably won't be in a position to need to borrow until June of 20, maybe June of 21.
Okay.
So there's a couple years gaps in our borrowings. So with that gap, we're going to be paying down debt service that comes with lower interest. So there will be some fluctuation there.
Okay, thank you. So, moving on to, still in parks, but I wanted to go to golf for a second, and I know we answered some of these questions already, but I do have a couple of questions about the, on page 615, about the leasing of vehicles. It went from about 125,000 to 0, and my question is, how is that done? Or is that just a temporary thing?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that really is, we didn't drop that money. It's just showing up on a different line. It's going to be in our asset line. It really, we've made this budgetary change out of 504-265 down to, you gotta flip the page to 616, capital leases. And that's just in preparation for an upcoming GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board. There's a change in accounting principle for how we have to treat leases.
On vehicles, through the chair.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, it's going to be all leases. Leases of photocopiers, buildings, vehicles. They're all going to be, they call it a different name, interest in financing instrument, but it's, in essence, a capital lease. They're all going to be treated as capital leases.
Okay. That depresses me, but okay. Just, if you think about it, everyone, if you're trying to track this year by year, everything gets moved around. Okay, thanks. All right. I'd like to move over to human resources, if I could. On page 161, if anyone's here from HR? No, doing okay. The first bullet talks about waiving residency requirements based on employment market conditions. What is that exactly? I mean, I'm assuming it's to attract more candidates. Is that correct, through the chair? And then how do we do with that?
I was summoned here. I understand there's a question.
Oh,
Through
yes.
the chair.
Yes, through the chair. On page 162 of the budget, the 2019 major accomplishments, the first bullet talks about waiving residency requirements based on employment market conditions. And I'm assuming that has to do with making our positions more attractive to a wider pool of applicants. And my question is that correct? And then how do we do, through the chair?
Through the chair, that's correct, and we did very well.
Great. Can you, when you say very well, can you provide a little more detail through the chair?
Through the chair, it's a number of situations, but two that come to mind are in the market for 4A licensed wastewater treatment operators. There is a nationwide and statewide shortage of those folks that our Pure Waters Division endures that shortage, as well as the town of Webster. Together, our department, the town of Webster, and the union, CSEA union, lobbied the Civil Service Commission for a residency waiver on the exam. That has given us more candidates. Specifically, or I should say anecdotally, the town supervisor of Webster was ecstatic to call me and let me know that they were able to hire a candidate from the state of Connecticut to be their new 4A operator at the Webster Sewer Treatment Plant. The other place that I would note is in the field of caseworker recruitment. There was a facility in Seneca County that was run by a local social services agency, and that agency decided to terminate its program in Seneca County and was going to be laying off a couple hundred people. Some of them were people who would qualify for caseworker if they had been a Monroe County resident. And so because of this unique situation, and also because of historic nationwide recruitment difficulty with caseworkers, the Civil Service Commission was convinced to waive the residency requirement, and a special recruitment fair was done for these employees, and a number of them took the examination. I could not say whether they were hired or not. I don't have that information.
Okay. Is it, and I'm imagining that a lot of this is related to the other objective, which was broadening job qualifications and just paid based on employment market conditions to help with recruitment difficulty. Are those the same examples you'd want to call up for that example, or do you have something different through the chair?
Yes and no, through the chair. In the case of caseworker, it would be the same as that. Historically, the minimum qualifications for caseworker in Monroe County at the request of the Department of Social Services were, in my opinion, overly complex, and that was a detriment to recruitment of qualified candidates. And so they took our advice to open up that field and allow for a bachelor's degree to qualify. So that was an example where that broadened our qualification group. And I could not quote to you the numbers, but I know that we had our largest exam holding with the largest number of candidates at our last holding, and part of that was the broader qualifications and the residency waiver. Another area is in CDLs, commercial driver's licenses. There is again, nationwide shortage of qualified employee.
I'm sorry. I
It's
didn't hear you.
okay, it was not,
I wasn't-
not a gun, so we're good.
I apologize. Was that the chair?
I'm still here.
All right. Through the chair, shall I conclude or continue?
Please continue.
You're welcome. Okay. So commercial driver's license, nationwide shortage in qualified candidates. We see that in the school bus career field as well. But the county employs a number of professionals who require CDLs. And to help broaden our recruitment field, we instituted some trainee titles. So motor equipment operator is a title that requires a CDL, and so we created a trainee title where someone can be hired without the CDL, and then they have a specific length of time to get the CDL, and that way we are expanding our recruitment pool.
Thank you. So through the chair of the administration, what I gather from that then is that what we've done is we have not expanded the number of positions. We've changed the qualifications to get into the existing positions. Is that correct through the chair?
Through the chair, could you repeat that question? Because I don't think that's correct, but I just want to make sure I listen more carefully.
Okay. Well, when you're talking about, for example, using the CDL trainee positions, it's not as though we still have the original position, and in addition to that, a trainee position. The original position became a trainee position. Is that correct through the chair?
Through the chair, no, that's incorrect. The trainee position sits in lieu of the regular position, so that if we had a candidate that already had a CDL, they'd be hired at the higher pay level of a full MEO. If those candidates are not available to us in the job market, then the department has the flexibility to hire a trainee, and then when they complete their traineeship, they move to the full position.
Right, so it's the same number of positions. You're just hiring a trainee who will eventually be trained to the full position through the chair.
That is a correct statement, through the chair.
Okay, I thought I said that before, but fair enough. Through the chair of the administration, I did want to say I like the 2020 major objective of moving to an online benefits open enrollment. I think that's an incredibly good move. Just wanted to note that. And I wanted to ask a question about a major objective from 2019, which is also a major objective for 2020, which was, quote, promote retiree health insurance buyout benefits to reduce expense and provide flexibility to county retirees. How's that going so far, through the chair?
I believe the county legislator is familiar that that has been an objective for a number of years in our department. And I am happy to say that in this open enrollment period for the first time, we are executing on the retiree buyout. It was negotiated into the labor agreements, and so we have several takers who are interested in receiving a stipend in lieu of their retiree health insurance, and we view that as a win-win.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I ask now.
Okay. Legislator Mafucci.
Is on? There we go. So through the chair to the administration, first, a couple comments. Mrs. Hurley made a comment earlier about our siloed approach to helping people, and I think by reconfiguring or reinstituting the Council of Governments through the chair, we could actually promote more common work so that we could not be so siloed and independent in addressing human services needs. That's statement number one. Statement two, I would like to thank Mr. Franklin for all his hard work over the years. I've only been here 2 years, but having had a budget director at my school, I know how important it is to have talented people controlling the numbers. So thank you for your hard work and dedication. A statement about page 12. Very quickly, since I'm going to beat a dead horse, as a former superintendent of schools, I still have battle scars from the FAIR Plan. Many of you here may not remember that through the chair to the administration. And I just think that taking credit for giving school districts money that we had to sue the county to get seems a bit inappropriate. So I just want to remind people again that for me, through the chair to the administration, it's a little astonishing that we would want to remind people of that debacle. It cost the county a lot of money as well as school districts. We got our money back, but the county had to borrow money to pay us back. So that's that. I do have a question on page 57. So apparently, we have fund balances to the tune of about, through the chair to the administration, we have fund balances to the tune of about $60 million, $61 million. 15.7 million of it is unassigned. So where does that money reside? What are we planning to do with it through the chair to the administration?
Mr. Chairman, of the almost $61 million in fund balance, $30.814 million is non-spendable, and that is comprised of the interfund receivable due from solid waste to the general fund. It includes $1.522 million for inventories. It includes $2 million that Monroe County bought the airport bond for the next 5 years. And includes $6.792 million of prepaid expenses. Another portion of our fund balance is restricted, which includes $577,000 for the Stop DWI program, $38,000 for the handicap parking program, $1,312,000 related to other grant-related programs, for a total of $1.927 million. Another portion of our fund balance is called committed. Really, it represents $3.602 million related to executed contracts that cross calendar years. And as the legislator noted, Mr. Chairman, $8.840 million is assigned fund balance, which we assign for probation and juvenile detention, other social service programs, preschool special education services, the next year's pension amortization expense payment, and a cash capital transfer. That is the entire $61 million, Mr. Chairman. It is fully described on page 42 of the CAFR.
So through the chair to the administration, I just want to focus on, in that chart, through the chair to the administration, it talks about $15.7 million of estimated unassigned fund balance. So what is that?
Mr. Chairman, that would be the estimate of the fund balance that probably the next CFO will review and assign for probation and juvenile detention costs, the next year's pension amortization payment, preschool, estimated next year's preschool special education expense. Assigned fund balance really is a financial decision that the budget office, the controller's office, and the CFO will discuss when it's time to put the CAFR together.
Thank you, and through the chair to the administration, and the reason I asked that question, I'm used to having specific reserves that are restricted, as opposed to unappropriated fund balance, which is available for use for whatever we deem
Those
appropriate.
restrictions would be found elsewhere. in
Which
the
you'll
CAFR.
probably get involved in your new spot, so through the chair to the administration, it'll be interesting. I do have a question through the chair to the administration. In the audit report that the comptroller did back in 2017, 2018 actually, they talked about getting $35 million from closing LDCs. I'm wondering where those funds are. Are they expensed? Are they available? I mean, obviously, I think they'd be reported as unassigned, but I am curious.
No, Mr. Chairman. The funds that came over from the LDC dissolution, a large portion of that was reported and recorded in our internal services fund. You're testing my memory, Mr. Chairman. I believe it was somewhere around $20 million for the internal services fund. I want to say there was, again, excuse the faulty memory, but I want to say 11 or 12 million related to the general fund.
Thank you. If we could go quickly to page 50, through the chair to the administration. Let me go here myself. Through the chair to the administration, it's page 49, where the revenue comes from, the pie chart. Through the chair of the administration, the $403,932,230 is reported as property taxes, but it's referred to on page 59, so I'm going to go slow here. As tax levy. And we've had kind of correspondence about property taxes versus tax levies. And obviously, the number we report on page 59 as the tax levy is only the levy for the general budget through the chair of the administration.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So I'm wondering, how do we, or why don't we, report the various levy dollars that we have to claim as levy on our tax cap compliance form?
Mr. Chairman, those revenues show up. A big one is pure waters charges. They would show up as, I don't have the page, but it would be in the budget book under the pure water section as pure waters charges. Our levy for below-the-line chargebacks, BOE is an example, Fire Bureau is an example. Those would show up in the budget page for BOE, the budget page for the Fire Bureau.
Thank you, I do understand that, and I do just have a kind of a question. It's an open-ended question. Since the tax cap compliance process, governments really can't have or shouldn't have separate levies. There's one levy. So I'm curious through the chair to the administration why we don't do that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just take a stab that our charter asks us to calculate and display in our budget book what the levy is for the general budget. And it describes how departmental revenues, such as BOE and the Fire Bureau, should be reported.
Thank you, and through the chair to the administration, one final question, since I think, I would just ask this as an open-ended question to you. Do you think that's a good idea to present a levy that is then used to report a tax rate that really is an accurate rate when people go to their tax bill and compute their rate?
Mr. Chairman, I sleep just fine at night the way we present it, and that's an honest opinion on my part.
Thank you. I'll move on to someone else. I have some other questions, but I'll wait.
Legislator Morelli.
Just a few questions, if I could. Mr. Chairman, page 759, in terms of pension costs, do we plan on paying our 2019 pension costs this month and in December to receive a discount that is given?
We do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, how much do we still owe on our deferred pension costs?
Mr. Chairman, in the 2018 CAFR, the liability is about, actually, I have the CAFR, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go look. I think it's $25 million. That includes, however, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to misquote the number. Let me just pull up the CAFR. Mr. Chairman, the CAFR for 2018 will show a $37.1 million liability. However, that includes a $12 million additional payment we made. I believe it was made January 31st or February 1st. So if you back off 12 million, you're down to about 25 million.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I could, in regards to the Office of Public Integrity, page 232, how many investigations were performed in 2019 by the Office of Public Integrity?
Mr. Chairman, although we don't have a representative from Office of Public Integrity here tonight, I do recall that they do publish an annual report. That figure will be made available in the annual report.
Okay, thank you. Looking over the budget, it appears that the county clerk's office has again made a profit, so I continue to thank the county clerk for his work. Moving on to the district attorney's office, I see that the county's net support of the district attorney's office is increasing. Through you, Mr. Chairman, could we have a understanding of why that is the case?
Mr. Chairman, I'll put words in the DA's mouth unless there's a representative here. The largest portion of that increase is related to the new discovery requirements. And we do have representatives from the DA's office. Mr. Chairman, I'll let them tag me out.
Please repeat the question.
Yes, page 371 of the budget, we have an increase in the county's support for the district attorney's office, and my question is, why is that? What is the reason behind the increase?
Through the chair, as was just stated, that is mainly due to an increase in the number of positions that, because of the new discovery law that is going into place beginning January 1st.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's also worth noting, Mr. Chairman, that we refer to the district attorney's office, the $16 million of the district attorney's office as a mandated expense. However, I think it's probably would be a disservice to not have a district attorney in this county, and in fact, the state doesn't allow us, so simply to call that a mandated expense seems rather disingenuous. Moving on, Mr. Chairman, if I could, page 667, family assistance. If I could, Mr. Chairman, the reason that the temporary assistance for needy families is going down, can you give us a reason as to why that's the case?
Mr. Chair, basically, the reduction in funding for family assistance is in direct correlation to the reduced caseload size that is projected for 2020.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, did we see a decrease in that in 2019 in caseloads?
We did, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, page 526, child welfare, why are the public assistance benefits dropping?
Mr. Chairman, there's quite a bit of detail here. Generically, although the number of children is actually increasing, the cost per case is decreasing. If I may have a minute and flip back to the child welfare page within the DHS budget, I can provide further detail.
Would be great, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, we actually derive a composite number, both dollars and a composite number of cases. Child welfare really has been trending, it does fluctuate from year to year, but it breaks out into a slight reduction in cost between 2019 and 2020, going from 29 million down to 26.3 million. The number of children is actually increasing from 494 to 565, but just doing the math between cost divided by the number of children, cost per youth is down significantly from 58,889 down to 46,525.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, is there a reason behind that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, what was that?
Is there a reason behind the decrease?
Mr. Chairman, one difference between, I'm looking at page 194 of the budget book, that's the child welfare section. The difference between that page and the appropriations detail on page
26.
560 something, is a combined number decreasing from 39 million down to 36 million and change. I do need to add, there's also a significant reduction in raise the age related cost. The budget for 2019, in all honesty, Mr. Chairman, was a pretty well-intentioned estimate, but an estimate nonetheless. It was almost $9 million, and we're just not seeing the number of raise the age youth in this county. So we brought that budget down to just shy of $6 million.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, under daycare, page 191, why are we lowering the net county support for daycare?
Primarily, Mr. Chairman, it is a result of the increase in the state's child care block grant allocation.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, page 228, in terms of in regards to Monroe Community Hospital, just a brief overview as to why the overall budget is down 3.9%.
There's a lot going on in this budget. Let me just try and hit the highlights, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Within the budget for contractual services, going from 25.5 million down to 23.3, a lot of that reduction relates to the Medicaid upper payment limit. That's the revenue received from New York State as a result of negotiations with federal CMS because of a disproportionate Medicaid population in county-run facilities. The hospital actually pays New York State 50% of the UPL allocation. So really that allocation is now 50% federal, 50% local. It is by all estimations, the UPL payment is coming down for 2020. Therefore, our 50% share is also coming down to the tune of just over $1 million. Also within here, you'll see a reduction for supplies and materials. This wasn't necessarily targeted reductions for the budget, more, however, reflective of a 2018 actual cost of $7.2 million. I'll also point to debt service, Mr. Chairman. Debt service is coming down quite a bit, a little more than $4 million last year to just under $3 million this year. Last year, we had a bond anticipation note that we used appropriated fund balance within the debt service fund to fully redeem this past June. There was no bond anticipation note issued for the hospital this year, so there's no payment required next year. So that is another $1 million reduction. That's most of it, Mr. Chairman.
Finally, on that, Mr. Chairman, through you, have we, for Monroe Community Hospital, have we budgeted funds for the recovery of the overdue billing, and particularly contracting with the outside vendor?
No, Mr. Chairman. That revenue was recognized in prior years, so that would just be a recoupment of cash, not a recoupment of revenue.
Okay. Thank you. And as my other colleagues have mentioned, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Franklin, for your work on this in terms of the budget, your willingness to answer all of our questions, and to know the even minute details that well, some members of my caucus ask. So to that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank Mr. Franklin and do wish him all the best in his future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Legislator Mafucci.
Thank you. I just have one question. Through the chair to the administration, I just want to get a better feel for mandates. On page 517, which you don't really need to go there, we contribute a little over $19 million a year to MCC. Is that included in our total amount that we consider mandated expenses?
Mr. Chairman, we think it is. We're really pretty sure, but we need to respond to that in writing.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay.
I'm good.
Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to start off with, I have never seen Mr. Franklin so relaxed in my life. And I think it's a result of a good budget, but also, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions. And it kind of goes back to some of the answers that we got. Safety net assistance, page 188, through the chair, is dropping. I don't have the page open. And I guess my question to you in making this budget is why, when you mentioned a number of times the possible anticipation of a possible economic downturn, that we would at this point cut, if anything, from that line rather than keep it whole. To me, if things begin to slow during 2020, it's going to be aggregate at the end of the year, and that's usually when we run out of funding. So my question, or perhaps my statement, is why, if that's your opinion, that we may have a downturn, or your warning, why we would bother cutting at all.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that we've accounted for that. And I do not want to duplicate the commentary by the division director, Director Reed, on poverty in the greater Rochester area. I will say, though, the caseloads for safety net have dropped precipitously. And based on a projection of where we think things are going, our budget is actually a little higher than what the projection indicates. And we did that on purpose to try and hedge bets. Should the local economy head into recession late 2020, I do want to comment, we pay on a monthly basis for temporary assistance. Increases in caseloads late in the year have fewer months to propagate the financial impact. So our projections for 2020 are actually a little higher than where the math would point them to be. So I do believe we've taken that into account. I would also say, based on my experience, our caseload trends lag changes in the local
Right.
economy by 6 to 12 months.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I guess I'm through the chair, looking into 2021, then if we begin to lag, we always will lag, and if we don't have to lag in the funding.
I will pat myself on the back, Mr. Chairman. We've accounted for that as well. Part of our assigned fund balance in 2018 is for the future uptick of public assistance expenses.
Then I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you put that in the objectives, so we can see that ahead of time. That would help, and it's a good thing. Thank you. Quickly on childcare, it appears that it's going down, Mr. Chairman, is, other than, again, what we consider to be a possible downturn, did we spend down all the funds that we were qualified to have in 2019? I know that's the end of the year, so perhaps 2018 through 2019.
Mr. Chairman, although we budget on a calendar year, all reconciliations are required to be done on a federal fiscal year. I don't think for the federal fiscal year ended September 30th, 2019, we spent every dollar of the allocation. So we're going to have a small rollover into the 1920 federal fiscal year.
So then, obviously, this is just a side question through the chair. Since we have that rollover, or a small rollover, are you still accepting applications?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. We are not only accepting applications and processing them according to eligibility. Several months ago, we went on TV and told people the gates are open, come see us. But the application demand is just not there. The application volume is not there.
Thank you. And then, through the chair, TV, media is a great way to get that word across. Also, the DNC. So, thank you for that little aside. I have just a couple more. When we spoke about, or you spoke about, or Mr. Conrad spoke about human resources and the broadening of qualifications, which I'm not criticizing the broadening of qualifications whatsoever. It does read a bit like a relaxing of some qualifications. That said, through the chair, did we have MC's Monroe County employees that took up the opportunity to apply for a position that they might not have been able to qualify for in the past?
Through the chair, Braden Connor, Director of Human Resources. I was not there for the first part of the question, so I don't, if you could
I can repeat.
recap so I can answer.
Did you say repeat?
Yep, please repeat the question.
My ears are plugged, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Through the chair, of the recent broadening of the qualifications for CPS, did we, shortened version, did we have current Monroe County employees that took exception and tried to qualify for the positions that they might not have qualified before?
Through the chair, To the extent I understand your question, I'm going to say no.
Thank you. And then through the chair, were they, were I want to say MCC, and it's just not there. Monroe County employees, they were aware of the broadening of qualifications?
Through the chair, the qualifications are all publicly posted, and this may or may not be helpful to you, but the caseworker position is not a promotional position. It is an open competitive examination. It is not part of, it's the entry level to a career ladder.
Yes, I understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And could you explain through the chair, the residency, waiving of the residency, what the timing is on that? I'm assuming that they have a certain amount of time to enter the county, or not, through the chair?
Through the chair. Residency is governed by multiple factors. One is county policy, another is the collective bargaining agreement, the third is state public officers law, and the fourth is the rules of the Monroe County Civil Service Commission. The rules of the Monroe County Civil Service Commission dictate who can apply for an examination, and so you have to be a resident of Monroe County for 4 months immediately preceding the date of examination in order to compete in that examination. And that's for all open competitive examinations, regardless of which level of government is hiring off of that list. Once you are hired, then it is up to the individual employer to determine what the terms and conditions of employment are. In our case, Federation of Social Workers contract does have a residency requirement. In this particular case, we were going to extend up to 6 months because of the uniqueness of the recruiting opportunity with the Social Services Agency closing in Seneca County, but normally it is required upon date of hire. So that is the normal procedure through you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to, I guess, finance, through the chair, when we were talking about the, I think Legislator Baroth mentioned hotel motel tax. I think he did, but if he didn't, then I will. And having sat on the audit committee as well, I know that at least a year ago there was conversation with regards to Airbnb and the Airbnb business and the taxation for hotel motel tax within that function. So I'm assuming that it went through and that we are. And my question is based on, is that accountable in this? And the second part of that, do you think that that's successful? Or do you think going forward that needs more oversight?
Mr. Chairman, the agreement with Airbnb to collect on our behalf the hotel tax, I think has generated more revenue from Airbnb than they initially estimated. This might be a 2-year-old discussion. I can't quite remember. I think the initial estimate was somewhere around $80,000 to $90,000 on an annual basis. The actual dollars received from Airbnb is closer to the 260 to 280 range, so significantly higher. I don't, Mr. Chairman, really believe that is all an increase in tax revenue. I would suggest a portion, although I'm not in a position to comment, a majority portion or a minority portion is attributable to a shift. People who were going to come here anyhow, they're just not staying in a hotel, they're renting an Airbnb. Collections for hotel tax have clicked up, maybe $100,000, $120,000 a year for the past couple years. In very round numbers, I can go to the page, but in round numbers, it's almost $9 million estimated for 2020. In all honesty, I like to hold back maybe $150,000 for the county's risk that it won't be collected when we do our allocations. But we're allocating out almost all the revenue we anticipate collecting, of which Airbnb is part of that, and it's shown to be maybe $280,000 a year.
Thank you. And then
Next would be VRBO.
right.
we've tried contacting them, Mr. Chairman. It's just not as easy a process as it was working with Airbnb.
Yeah. And then through the chair, I don't know if I want to bother going down this road. I think I'll leave that part there. I wanted to move on, if I could, Mr. Chairman, to parks. And, sounds like I throat. In parks, and I didn't find this answered in any of the department questions that were answered for us previously, information services is up considerably. Can you explain that?
I'm pretty confident, Mr. Chairman, the explanation is related to parks going on the new work order system. It was initially a system developed through DES and DOT, but it's certainly robust, and parks wanted in on that system, so now they're bearing more, a greater portion of that system's costs.
Thank you. That makes sense. And then, again, at the same department, Mr. Chairman, can you explain the large, I anticipate I know the answer for this, but the large uptick in the salaries budgeted for 2020 at the park? The zoo, I'm sorry, the zoo.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Personnel services is actually a decrease in the zoo.
On page 613? Oh, that's the parks. My bad. Well, same
Rec and
question,
Ed-
parks.
Rec and Ed program, Mr. Chairman, on page 613. I can answer them all, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Go for it, thank you.
Within Seneca Park Zoo, we actually are seeing lower personnel services, and that's primarily due to lower temporary help and a modest salary vacancy factor we applied to overall positions. Within Rec and Ed division of parks, there were actually 2 FTEs that were shifted to Rec and Ed from admin, so you should see a decrease in personnel costs in admin. So that was 2 FTEs shifted there. Also an increase in the budget line for temporary help. Those are the 2 major items that caused Rec and Ed personnel services to increase over $100,000.
All right, thank you. And that's it, thank you.
Okay. Legislator Baroth.
I do have some more questions. I just wanted to give everyone a chance. I want to go back to human services. I'm kind of concerned because we've mentioned here a few times that the safety net average monthly caseload is going down and the family assistance monthly caseload is going down. And that's not necessarily true according to the budget. I mean, according to the budget document, if you go to page 188 and 189, yes, that's true. The number's going from 5648 to 4786 and 5000 to 4499. That's true. But if you go to page 180 for the performance estimates, those same numbers, they're different numbers, but they're going up. So if the performance estimate for 2020 for safety net is going to be 4968, whereas for 2019 it was 4524. So it's going up 500, 400 according to the performance estimates, and a similar number, 600 more for family assistance, is going up as well. So my question is twofold. Which is it? Is it going up, anticipated to go up, or is it anticipated to go down? Okay, from a budgetary perspective, it seems you made the decision that we're going to estimate it's going to go down, but from a performance measure estimate, they've made the estimate it's going to go up. Do you see what I'm saying here? Through the chair.
I think I do, Mr. Chairman. Page 180, service delivery.
Correct.
Average monthly family assistance caseload. Next line, average monthly safety net assistance caseload. Page 180 definitely compares 2018 actual to the estimates for 19 and 20.
Yes.
The budget pages 188 and 189, which describe the budget for safety net and the budget for safety for family assistance, is really comparing budget to budget,
Right.
not actual to budget. What we've seen for 2018 is that the actual average monthly caseload was lower than budget.
Mhm.
We are seeing that for 2019.
Mhm.
For 2020 proposed budget, I tried to describe in a prior answer that if we just do predictions based on math and trending, the budget for 2020 would probably be lower than where we have it.
Mhm.
Trying to hedge our bets by budgeting a little higher to account for the potential of an economic downturn.
Right. So from that answer, what I understand then is what you're talking about is in past years, that's what happened as well. So the budget was artificially inflated in past years, and so that's why it's going down more now than it does in the performance measures, because that wasn't, because if you go back and look at the actuals through the chair, I went back 2016, 2017, 2018, the actuals, they're declining. They did decline I'll just use the family assistance, from 5,300 to 4,800 to 4,300. So yeah, it did go down. And then we have the estimates going down to 3,800.
Yes.
And then an estimate going up again.
Yes,
So-
yes. I will say, Mr. Chairman, I give a lot of credit to the Temporary Assistance Director, Denise Reed, for driving down the caseload numbers. She's done a great job. I worked there myself for 8 years, thought I did a bang-up job, but we never saw the results, and the result being a reduction in caseload. So when, unfortunately, when I was there, Mr. Chair, the budgeted caseload was actually lower than the actual caseload. So it ran a little scary.
So now with the reverse situation going on now,
It
correct?
is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I understand this correctly. Essentially, what the budget did was, it's basically taken, bear with my terminology, it took what we actually saw and put a cushion in.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have to give this body some advice on that. And this is, I know even I've used the words in the past, it's been artificially high, and I don't like to say that, but I also have used the words in the past to give ourselves a cushion. Public assistance benefits, whether it's family assistance, safety net, preschool special ed, EI, those are mandated payments based on the provision of services and mandated eligibility requirements. We, as a county, cannot say no if you are programmatically and financially eligible. Failure to appropriate sufficient funding is not a reason to deny payment. And the county could really run into serious trouble if caseloads and caseload costs runs higher than the budget, and we don't have the appropriations to pay for it.
Okay, that's well taken. Thank you. I want to, I'm still staying with human services for a while here, but going to page 183 under purchase services staff development. There's, if you look at the new worker and in-services program on page 183, in the 2018 actual, there's a severe drop in persons trained by staff. In the past, it was like 2015, 4,200, 2016, 3,500, 3,100 in 2017, and then went down to 1,600 in 2018. And then it goes back for an estimate for 3,000. Do we know why the number dropped in 2018 actual?
Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to provide an answer in writing before Tuesday.
That would be fine, thank you. Okay. I have a question from, for public health, under nursing services major objectives. And that's on page 275. And the major objective from 2019 was to increase childhood immunization rates in Monroe County by 2% over 2018. And it wasn't listed in the accomplishments. Do we know if that happened or not, through the chair?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was, just not reported as an accomplishment.
It did happen, though. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, through the chair of the administration, I want to talk a little bit about the maternal and child health services section, and in particular, some of their performance measures. If you go to page, page 284, there we go. If you go to page 284, we no longer have two measures, which kind of bothers me. It's the NFP home visits, which was an actual number, and the NFP new clients, enrolled clients, which is also an actual number. And they've been replaced, well, those two went away, and there's 4 new ones. And the 4 new ones are all percentages. So now we have a WIC infants exclusively breastfeeding at 6 months, a percentage, which is okay. Then it has the NFP enrolled clients preterm birth rate, a percentage, but it doesn't tell you how many clients there actually are. And then the childhood injury rate for enrolled children, and it was a number per 1,000. Why is it that we are no longer giving the two that went away, the actual number of home visits and the actual number of new clients versus enrolled clients, through the chair?
Through the chair. There was a change in the software system that the national NFP organization is using, and they changed the benchmark data that they're collecting, and so we are forced to look at different benchmarks compared to what we used to.
Oh. Do we still collect these numbers through the chair? Do we have them?
Through the chair, we do collect many of the same numbers, but since the switchover to the new system, which occurred a year ago in October, there has been a delay in the national organization being able to report back to us some of the data because they're having some difficulty with the switchover. It's a national switchover, and so there are delays in their analytics.
Okay. For another conversation offline, I would like to follow up on this because I went back in the budget as well, and I was checking out it was a general decline going on in terms of the number of home visits, and we have no way of knowing, or at least I have no way of knowing, if that's still ongoing or not, and I would be curious to know what that is, but that's another conversation for another time. But I do want to go back to the new measure, which is the childhood injury rate for enrolled children per 1,000. In 2018, the actual was 51 out of 1,000, and in 2019, the estimate is 6 out of 1,000. And I suppose, that sounds like a great thing, but I guess what accounts for the pretty dramatic decrease in the rate? Through the chair.
Through the chair. These are actual numbers, and so we're delighted with this change. It's very impressive. We would love to be able to claim credit for all of it. However, during the same period of time, a number of other things were going on in the community, and so I don't think it's fair for us to say it's all because of the nurses' educational efforts. It may be partly due to their efforts, but there have been a number of other initiatives in the community directed at the same population.
Well, through the chair, it does take a village, but to be fair, you should take some credit for it because clearly you're engaged in that as well, and I do want to say congratulations on that because that really is significant. It does stand out. But I recognize the fact, yes, there are, of course, other players. Thank you. So, through the chair of the administration, I did have a couple questions regarding the environmental health under medical examiner, at least I assume it is 5806, page 295. And I just wanted to note, I went there and I checked, and it was missing last year and it's missing again this year. It doesn't have, again, the tobacco enforcement sales compliance checks. It doesn't have the number of tobacco-related enforcement actions or the number of children screened for lead and the food workers certified and all those good things. They're not there, and I think it's pretty much a disservice not to have them there. And so my question again that I asked last year is, why are we not measuring these again? Through the chair.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question for me?
You're killing me.
Sorry, Smalls.
Okay, so through the chair, to the administration, underneath environmental health, there's a number of performance measures that were in existence in 2018 proposed budget on back, but in 2019 they went away, in 2020 they're still gone. And that was the food workers certified rabies immunizations administered to domestic animals, tobacco enforcement sales, compliance checks, the number of tobacco-related enforcement actions, and children screened for lead. And I was asking why we are no longer providing those performance measures, particularly the last three about tobacco and lead. Through the chair.
Our environmental manager, Wade Silkworth, and I made the decision to report on these 5 metrics, primarily because they represent opportunities for cross-training and collaboration within the division. These are the same metrics that we reported last year, if I recall. And so those are numbers that we don't currently report, but we have those available if you're interested.
I would very much be interested in the tobacco and the child screens for lead ones for the past 3 years, if that's possible, through the chair.
We'll do our best.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and as a suggestion, I still think it'd be a great idea to include it in the budget proposal, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, through the chair of the administration, moving on to epidemiology disease control. On page 299, the performance measures there. I was looking at the past year's actuals, and they've been declining pretty steadily. From 2015, it was 1387 for disease investigations, and it went down to 1268. In 2016, down to 1159. In 2017, down to 1065 in 2018, and yet now we're estimating at 1250 for 2019 and 2020. Why is that the case? And if you look at the estimates for past year's budget proposals, they've always been well above what we actually did. Through the chair.
Through the chair, this is a moving target. As you know, we had a number of measles concerns this year, so that has increased. Hepatitis B, hepatitis A, those are active issues, in part because there are greater cases of these illnesses, and also through expanded efforts to increase screening, we're detecting more of these illnesses. And so these are our estimates, and we're doing our best to try to estimate them, but we do think it's going to go up.
Okay, but I am correct to say, from 2015 to 2018, there was actually a decline, though, through the chair.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so we anticipate going up again. Thank you. Under Monroe Community Hospital, something strange happened on the performance measures, and this is on page 229. If you look at respiratory therapy treatments, okay, starting with the 2017 actuals to the 2018 actual. In 2017, the number of respiratory therapies was listed as 210,015. In 2018, it was 577. And it stayed down there. And if you go back in time, it was up in the hundreds of thousands. What happened? Do we change how we measure this, or is something changed in another fashion? Through the chair. And all the other treatments stayed pretty consistent.
Through the chair, I don't have the 2017 numbers in front of me, but I'd be happy to take a quick look at them and get a response for you next Tuesday.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that 217 numbers, as reported by prior budgets, is 210,000. It's a crazy reduction down to 577. So if you could explain that at some point in writing, that'd be wonderful.
Through the chair, we changed the statistic, but I'd be happy to get a better response for you by Tuesday.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And on a follow-up question, it's on page 229 as well, under specialty resident populations, we no longer track dementia patients in-house, traumatic brain injury patients, or respiratory care patients. Why is that, through the chair?
Through the chair, we do collect that information internally. I'd be happy to provide that information to you.
Okay, thank you, that'd be appreciated. And then finally, for the Monroe Community Hospital, under revenue, so page 688, miscellaneous revenue, line 410-205, and I'll wait a second, 688. There was on that line for miscellaneous revenue, there was a $3 million dip in 2019 amended. Has that anything to do with those uncollected billing that occurred back when we had the switchover for the new patient billing software?
While, Mr. Chairman, I didn't catch the whole question, I believe part of it was related to the billing issue, but
yes.
No, this is mostly, miscellaneous revenue on this page is primarily tenant rent, the vending revenue, cafeteria revenue, and purchasing rebates through our group purchasing organization.
Thank you. That makes sense. And so, is that lost revenue reflected anywhere in the budget? Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. back 2018, 2019, we switched over to a new patient billing system, and there were some problems with that we talked about at a previous meeting, and it caused us to have a reduction in the amount of billing payments we received. And so I was wondering, where is that loss reflected through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, that is really a difference of cash. We are not cash basis budgeting nor cash basis accounting. So the revenue associated with prior service was recorded in prior years, so that revenue is already on the books. What you may see once we start collecting on those old billings is adjustments, downward adjustments to our allowance for uncollectible accounts that should come down. That will have an impact on the income statement. Tonight, I'm just not in a position to comment on the magnitude of that impact.
And fair enough, but if I wanted to look up what it was in this document, where would I look?
Mr. Chairman, that would not be a budget number. You
Okay.
would go to the CAFR and look at the
Look in the CAFR.
footnotes.
Okay, thank you. I was looking around trying to figure that out, and I came across miscellaneous, thought that might be it. Okay, thank you very much. Getting close. Okay. I'm going to go back to weights and measures, 2415. I did want to compliment the administration on bringing back 2 performance measures that were removed in 2019. So complaints investigated and pricing accuracy inspections. I was very happy to see that. And I also wanted to follow up. The question was asked earlier about how we're going from packaging commodities checked is going up to 75,000 from 30,000, and that was in writing. And the response had to do with purchasing WinWham packaging checking software licensure. And my question is, do we already have 1 license, and now we have 2, or how is that actually causing this increase of expected productivity through the chair?
Through the chair, it's Craig Lape, Administrator for Weights and Measures. We have 1 license now. We need to purchase the second one so I can have 2 crews going out, and that would double our efficiency and our number of packages that we can check during the year.
Okay, and so through the chair of the administration, do we already have those 2 crews, accounted for in the budget? They're available. We're just doubling the number of people who can go out at the same time, essentially, through the chair?
Through the chair, yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Getting close. So through the chair of the administration, I want to go back to the question about fleet vehicles. We talked already about how they charge back and forth $4.1 million, and generally that balances out. But when I looked at this, I noticed that there's quite a few departments out there having fleet vehicle maintenance charges. And my question is that because they have vehicles assigned to them, or is that because they take vehicles from a pool, or is that because someone has a take-home vehicle? So I could give you an example of, it's a benign example, planning, okay. So planning has a vehicle maintenance chargeback of $1,200, well, actually $1,300. Is that essentially what's associated with having a vehicle for the department, or is that a take-home vehicle, or what? Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman, the general answer is all of those allocation methodologies are employed for the fleet chargeback. For those departments that have take-home vehicles, they'll get the actual cost of gas or vehicle parts, repair labor. For vehicles that are used in a pool, a lot of departments have their own pooled vehicles, so they get all the charges for those. For the pooled vehicle, like if you're an employee and you're just driving once a year to Albany, you borrow a car from Fleet and you'll get whatever gas charge or toll charges for that. So actually all 3 methods of allocating cost are used.
Okay, and so they kind of get mixed in together, essentially, through the chair, from a budget point of view.
From a budget perspective, it's combined, yes.
Okay, so through the chair of the administration, Looking at page 139, under vehicles for environmental services, which is all the vehicles except for the sheriff's office. They have their own pool. It shows that I have 346 light vehicles written down. I'm not sure if I have that correct, but do all the fleet take-home vehicles come out of that pool of light vehicles? Am I correct to make that assumption? No, none of the trucks, none of the heavy vehicles. It's all light vehicles.
Through the chair, yes, they would come out of the light-duty fleet.
Okay. And then through the chair of the administration, how many take-home vehicles are currently being lent to county employees through the chair?
Through the chair, there are, I believe, 84 take-home vehicles. 42 may have commute designation, and the other half, I believe, are 24/7 designation.
So a 24 designation means basically the employee has the vehicle to drive around to use on work and they take it home or whatever. And then we had this other designation. What is that through the chair?
Through the chair, yeah, 24/7 use, right, they're able to use it for personal use within the county on a 24/7 basis.
Sure.
And there's an operational need for that. For commute use, that is really to and from work. And for, no personal use is allowed.
Okay, so the designation one is just commuting back and forth from work. Is that correct through the chair? Plus work stuff?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. No personal. And through the chair of the administration, you mentioned that of the 24/7 ones, the 42, there was an operational need. How is that operational need determined through the chair?
Through the chair, there is a form that's completed by the department head, supervisor, and the individual that they're requesting that designation for. There may be in the justifications provided. There might be equipment or communication devices that an individual needs to be able to respond on a 24/7 basis that would justify that. Certain department heads have a need for a 24/7 use as well. So it's on a case-by-case basis, and it's ultimately approved by the administration.
Okay. So you mentioned, and actually it's a question I was going to ask, do any of these vehicles that are lent out on a 24/7 basis equipped with special equipment or communication stuff that is actually attached to the vehicle somehow through the chair?
Through the chair, a vehicle that, an individual who has 24/7 use and has an assigned vehicle, yes, there are some, or several vehicles that are assigned to those individuals. For instance, myself, I have, radio in it. There's others who, are in a first responder status who have other types of equipment and other types of radios in their equipment as well. And yes, based on the need, they'll have certain equipment and or radios attached to them.
Thank you. That makes sense. But only, that's occasionally, but mostly probably not. Is that correct through the chair?
Could you repeat the question, please?
While there are some individuals who have special equipment, probably the majority of them do not. Would that be correct through the chair?
Through the chair, that's probably a fair assumption. I don't have a breakdown of that, but
And that's okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So some specific things I want to ask about the fleet charges. In particular, I noticed that the Office of Public Integrity has like $12,000 in fleet maintenance charges. Why is that? It's much higher than many other departments, aside from the workforces you would expect, like, I don't know, Pure Waters or Parks, stuff like that. I mean, they're like, that's really high. Why is that, through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, the consensus here at this table is the costs are primarily derived from the fact that they use 3 vehicles. They're out in the field every day on investigations, so they're driving a lot of miles, so there's fuel chargeback. They are driving, 2 of the 3 are older vehicles, so there's probably higher maintenance charges on them. Likely the fuel charge and the repair charge.
Okay, well, I'm kind of surprised because they have, you know, you say they're out every day, out on investigations, and I know from looking at the reports in the past that there aren't that many investigations going on. So, seriously, I mean, is that really the consensus that they're actually going out every day? I'm not questioning it, but I'm telling you, I mean, the law office, by comparison, which is much larger, has a fleet man's charge of $11,000, so less, and I would imagine they do more traveling because they, you know, do lorry sort of things. So sorry, you know, but the OPR line seems really, really high. Do they have like a couple 24/7 take-homes, or is it really just driving around?
All valid questions, Mr. Chair. We're probably going to have to respond in writing to give you a
Okay.
more full description.
Okay.
But I know 2 of the investigators, and they're out every day, even though the case numbers may indicate something lower.
Okay, no, and that's fair. I mean, I'm not an expert in investigations, and so, okay. But I would ask through the chair, I would like to have provided a list of who has, you know, those 24/7 take-homes. Because you know, that's one way of explaining high charges. Maybe multiple people in that department does. Maybe they don't, I don't know. But I would like that list. Is that possible through the chair?
Mr. Chair, we can find that list.
All right, thank you. Okay, not quite. All right, I'm down to my last section. Okay. So, moving on to the Sheriff's Office, Jail Bureau. If anyone from the Sheriff's Office is here, I just have a brief question. Thank you. All right, just 2 quick questions. On page 657, revenue line, so if you go to page 657, the revenue line for miscellaneous revenue, there's 2 questions here. One is, what is it? And why is it going from 343,000 to 0?
Mr. Chairman, this particular line, miscellaneous revenue, had previously accounted for the deputies' contribution to their parking costs, number of vehicles in Civic Center garage. The accounting process has changed. We now do not record that as a revenue. Going forward, it's a reimbursement of expense.
Okay. These accounting changes kill me, but okay, that makes sense.
I like it better, though, Mr. Chairman. I think it's more appropriate from a academic perspective.
Okay, I have no issue with that. My second question for the Jail Bureau has, on the same page, perhaps, is where would one find the commissary funds or the funds that they'll be getting from the phones and the tablets that will be coming forth in the future? Where would one find that revenue line through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, the commissary is a trust account. You're not going to find trust accounts in the operating budget.
Okay,
You may see reimbursement from a trust account, but that's it.
Okay, so if I were to look for that, where would I find that outside this budget through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, anyone inquiring about trust funds would have to contact the Controller's Office or the Office of the Sheriff if it's related to the commissary account.
Okay, so since the Office of the Sheriff is here, I would like to ask them, where would I find this amount of revenue or anticipated revenue for the telephone and tablet charges through the chair?
Through the chair, so we have it, and we can certainly meet, and I can show you it and show you where it is, but it's not, our budget director in the office has it, and we can pull it up anytime with where we're at and show you what's there.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
Legislator Kaley.
just a couple, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. On page 67, I can't fail in my duties to not ask this question through you to the administration. This talks about the discretionary awards of of a small amount, $45,000 to smaller agencies for cultural activities. Before the full legislature, could I get a breakdown of the agencies that took part in the grants, how it was divided up, the $45,000?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had that in my office, and unlike the authorized agencies, there is math behind those allocations based on financial statement reporting.
Right, thank you. I think, I just make a statement, I think it would be nice once in a while to actually, I've said this before, to actually put that in there. You don't have to put the amounts in there, but you could put the recipients in there so the public knows that it's of record that they received it. That's all on that one, really. And under environmental, and I'm sorry if, through the chair, that this might have been asked at another committee. I have been a bit under the weather, but I wanted to ask specifically why the sale of energy and the tipping fees are expected to go down drastically for 2020?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Do you have a page number real quick?
I did, 119.
Thank you. Regarding, Mr. Chairman, the sale of energy, this is the revenue derived from gas plant 1 out at Mill Seat.
Right.
In prior years, Monroe County owned the gas to electricity plant. We budgeted for the gross revenues generated by the sale of electricity. We also budgeted as an expenditure appropriation our payment to Waste Management for running and maintaining the facility. The debt for gas plant 1 was fully paid off during 2019, and according to our agreement, once the debt is paid in full, ownership of gas plant 1 transfers to Waste Management Renewable Energy. We now budget only the net revenue benefiting Monroe County, 48%, 51%. It's about 42% of the energy sales benefit Monroe County. So that is one reason for the decline in revenue. The other reason for the decline in revenue is energy rates are basically falling through the floor. You know, back in the day, they were $75, $85 per megawatt hour or kilowatt hour. It's down to like 34, 32. Quite the precipitous drop. Solid waste tipping fee revenue is declining a little over $2.5 million. Part of that is simply math. Most of the solid waste revenues expenses are passed through. For example, Waste Management pays us a fee, a host fee, and we basically record that as revenue, but we also turn around and budget for the expense because we got to pay out Riga, Byron Burgeon, and some fire districts. We also use solid waste tipping fees to balance the fund. So when all the math is done, when we're off $112, we plug the $112 of tipping fees. This particular proposed budget for 2020 goes beyond that. We've actually reduced tipping fees by $2 million to force net county support requirement of $2 million. We did that on purpose. We did that because solid waste for umpteen years, as routinely commented on by the late Paul Haney, is in trouble. Solid Waste Fund has an accumulated fund deficit of $18.9 million, I think. It owes the general fund $20 million in cash. We are to the point where, and the late legislator Haney was actually the CFO who helped create the Solid Waste Fund. We are at a point where, from an accounting rules perspective, we are on the edge of not really appropriately reporting them as an enterprise fund. They are not self-supporting. If we can adopt this budget, not only for 2020, but for the next 10 years, support, through net county support, through taxation, $2 million, we can recover the accumulated deficit in that fund in 10 years and pay back the general fund the $20 million that's owed, bringing the solid waste fund at least back to par financially. And so that it really should operate as a self-sustaining fund. Director Garland and I have worked for the past 5 years to turn solid waste fund around. We've had budget presentations. This legislature has adopted referrals in 2015 and 2016 to help improve the operations of that fund, and we are there. We've had 4 consecutive years of net operating income, 3 consecutive years where we've actually improved the net position of the fund. But as the state comptroller pointed out in that incredibly libelous audit report, it will take 35 years to get that fund out of its deficit. So it is a drag on the county's credit rating. It is a drag on the county's financial position. It is my belief and a professional opinion that if we can support this fund with a $2 million net county support, we can bring it back to solvency in 10 years.
Okay. Thank you. And then moving along through the chairman to information services, and I can take the answer in writing. My question has to do with where the charges are, where our cost is for data. It actually used to be listed in the budget, and I forgot the year that it drastically increased. I understand that it drastically increases our need for internet control, and data gobbling is big, but I can't find it. And what I'd like through the chair is the cost of data services from 2016, 17, 18, and the estimated cost in 2019. And if I could get that before the legislature?
Mr. Chair, appreciate the opportunity to respond in writing to that question, because that's going to take some digging. But
Thank
yes.
you. And finally, I just want to make a comment through the chair. When you were answering the questions on human services, it's always a difficult thing, and we bounce back and forth about mandates. We bounce back and forth about what we need to do and how many people are actually covered. And what I want to do, and going forward say this, for the last couple years, I have not heard the phrase maintenance of effort. And whether or not we are just adhering to maintenance of effort is within the reports that we receive. But I have to say that it's heartening not to have a combative response. And the final word is, we are doing maintenance of effort. That's never acceptable, whether it's mandated or not. And so I do appreciate the fact that on my last Ways and Means Committee of my career here, that I did not have to hear that term. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Legislator Felder.
Hoping I didn't hear it. Did you just accuse the controller of state of New York of libel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What did the controller do that constituted slander?
Mr. Chairman, we're here to talk about the budget. I'm really prepared, but
Okay.
I'll answer that question,
You-
Mr. Chairman. What do you want me to do?
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking the question. I'm asking the
understand-
question based on a comment that was made
Right,
by the finance director.
I understand,
I'm
and I would suggest, I would make a recommendation, maybe after the Ways and Means Committee is done,
The
that
conversation wasn't
you
had in
and
private. He said
Director,
this- he
or
said
the
this in opening
CFO
here
have us
here in this room.
sit down and talk about it after we're done with this
Well,
committee meeting.
let me ask you further. Is that the official position of the Monroe County Administration, that the controller has committed libel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we're gonna move on, okay? The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the minutes from the October 22nd, 2019 meeting before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk.
Referral 19-0263.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Legislator Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, is there a reason that this is going through the majority office versus the county executive's office?
It's the president's referral.
What page, through you, Mr. Chairman, which page of the county charter?
Which page of the charter?
Is the question still open, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
For some reason, Mr. Chairman, the charter actually has the president of the legislature selecting or providing for the independent audit of county finances. So it would, as opposed to a county executive referral, it's a president's office referral.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, is it the county executive's office that consults with the president of the legislature on this, as it is an overall of the county finances?
The executive's office, Mr. Chairman, it's mostly my office. The
And so
finance and
through-
controllers and purchasing.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, then it is the CFO who generally is.
Purchasing manager, controller, CFO, and president.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, as this pertains to not only a new administration, it also pertains to a new legislature, and this is a long-term contract. I will be voting no on this, as I believe it should come under new administration and a new county legislature. So with that, I will be voting in the negative.
Okay. Legislator Bafucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration. Is it possible to get the other firms that bid and what their bid was?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe our practice is to arrange a time to review the responses in person, rather than, I can tell you who else bid.
I would just, do I schedule an appointment with you or through you to the administration?
Mr. Chairman, it would be with the purchasing manager.
Okay.
So I have to make an appointment with the purchasing manager?
Through the chair, we'll get you the contact information for the purchasing manager and set it up through
Thank you.
your staff.
Okay. Legislator Kaley.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, given that we have to, through the chair to the administration, given that we're supposed to speak to the purchasing person, were there other responders to this RFP?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I thought the request was for a copy of the bids. We generally don't share a copy of the bids. If I misunderstood the question.
Is that what you were asking? Oh, Okay. So, thank you, through the chair to the administration, I think that we'd at least like to know before the appointment, who bid?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll give you the first year bid. Bonadio and Company, $264,210. The EFPR Group, $189,710. Lumsden McCormick, $297,480. A firm by the name of PKF O'Connor, $275,000. And Ray Wager, who is now associated with a larger firm, $281,010.
Okay, thank you. And then, because I don't have their addresses in front of me, do all the companies that you mentioned have local offices?
No, Mr. Chairman. At least 3 of the 5 do. I don't believe 2 of the 5 do.
Thank you. And then, could I get, prior to the legislative meeting next week, who had this contract for the last 5 years? And who had the contract for the previous 5 years and the previous 5 years? So in other words,
Mr. Chairman, from 2014 through 2018 fiscal years, it was Bonadio and Company. For the fiscal years 1994 through 2013, it was KPMG. For the fiscal years 1992 through 1993, KPMG Pete Marwick. Fiscal years 1989 through 1991, Deloitte and Touche. 1987 through 1988, Touche Ross.
thank you. Not to belabor anything, through the chairman, Bonadio is a good firm. It's enjoyed a lot of business from the county. And I've mentioned this before after being on different boards that, that going forward, keeping up to public authority standards, which I realize that we don't have to, that when the reports are online and available to the public, that we have not only the fact that Bonadio has written off, because I know how these things look, it just says Bonadio, but that the information of the auditor himself or herself be listed prominently, so there's no misconstruing that it's being done by the same person multiple years in a row. That's all, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, we're going to go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Ansello? Yes. Mr. Broth? No. Mrs. Draw? Yes. Mr. Felder? No. Ms. Cayley? No. Mr. Mafucci? No. Mr. Marinetti? Yes. Mr. Morelli? No. Mr. Rockow? Yes. Ms. Taylor? Yes. Chairman Delhany?
Yes.
6-5, motion passes.
Okay.
Referral, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, next item.
Referral 19-0265.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Okay. See none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0266.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Marianetti. Is there any discussion? See none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0267.
Moved by legislator Marianetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you. Through you to the administration, this question has to do with this referral and quite a few other referrals where we're accepting grants. This grant we're accepting will affect our work heading into the future, in this case up to September 30th, 2020. And in the back of the referral, it talks about one of the things we need to do is amend the 2019 operating budget, but makes no mention of amending the 2020 proposed budget. And the reason I ask is other grants here do make mention of having to, stating it's included in the 2020 proposed budget. So my question is, on this referral and a number of other referrals, does the 2020 proposed budget need to be amended or not? Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman, since that was a general question, I'm going to give you a general answer.
Well, even just for this specific referral.
I think, Mr. Chairman, you and the committee will benefit from the general answer.
Okay.
There are a number of grants that come to us which cross the calendar years.
Right.
For a one-year grant that comes to us and crosses the calendar year, we generally amend the current year's budget for the full dollar amount. The unexpended portion of the grant rolls forward into the next calendar year. Using the grants module, it's very effective at allowing discrete grant fiscal year reporting, and we include specific legislative authorization allow us to reappropriate any unencumbered funds. There are grants that come to us multi-year, 3-year grants, $1.5 million, that may specifically say it's $500,000 a year for 3 years, total of $1.5 million. We will amend the current year budget for only the first $500,000 year one award. We tell SAP year 2 is 500 and year 3 is 500. And our accounting system, SAP, through the grants module, knows to modify the future budget by that grant award. So in our language, modifying the budget is a little different than amending the budget. Modify the budget since we pre-program SAP to know what those future years' awards are. There are also multi-year grants that come to us where it's $1.5 million for 3 years, spend it all today if you want. For those grants, we generally appropriate the entire grant award in the current year and allow any unencumbered, unexpended funds to roll forward throughout the remaining portion of the grant period.
Okay. That, by the way, was an excellent answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, seriously, very clear. Thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0268.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0269.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rocco. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barat.
Through you to the administration, I'm sure this is correct, but I notice for budget year, well, July 1st, 2017 through June 2018. I'll just ask, is that correct, through the chair?
Through the chair, Tim Donner, Public Defender. Yes, that is correct. This funding stream was held up due to federal litigation that was recently resolved. So the state is now passing along funding through that for that fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Oh, Legislator Cayley.
I think for the final meeting, I'm just going to get like one of those phone hands.
I got you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration and to the head of our Public Defender's Office. I just want to go on the record as saying that I was present at the first meeting in 2008. That was quite the show, and I didn't know what I was in for. However, being that I sat through a horrific meeting in 2008 at the last seat in the last row and watched everyone get pulled out, I would like to say that our public defender has done an exceptional job. And I just want to go on the record as being extremely appreciative of his tenacity and his regard for the public that he defends. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Through the chair, I have wonderful people working for me, and all of your praise is largely attributable to their efforts. So thank you, and thank you for your support over the last 12 years.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0270.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0271.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 71, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
The glasses kind of messed me up. And thank you, through you to the administration. When you talk about Monroe County Auto Theft Task Force, is this in regards to funding to etching, identification? Could you just give me a brief one sentence of what you do for auto theft prevention?
Through the chair, this specific funding is being used for investigations. So the task force will perform county-wide investigations for insurance fraud, stolen vehicles, and vehicle larcenies.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0272.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0273.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, just
Bless you.
one brief question. I recall this came up, I'm not sure how many years ago, but probably 4 or 5 years ago. But my question is, are there any other contracts held by other denominations to provide similar services to inmates? Through the chair.
Legal counsel for the sheriff. No, there are not.
No. So through the chair of the administration, then what was the impetus for this particular contract originally through the chair?
Through the chair, this is a non-denominational organization, provides education, counseling services throughout the jail.
Okay, but through the chair of the administration, it does say to distribute Christian material.
I believe it's non-denominational.
Okay, so if I happen to be Muslim, what would I do through the chair?
You'd be able to participate in the counseling programs.
But with the Christian materials, correct?
I don't know if it's Christian materials or not. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Then I'd appreciate that if you could.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0274.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0275.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0276.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0277.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, through you to the administration, these last two grants have been decreased. Does that, in regards to both of them together, I suppose, does that cause any hardship or problem to the Department of Public Safety?
Through the chair, Deputy Public Safety Director Tim Kohlmeyer. Could you restate the question? The question was, did it?
Excuse me, briefly, did it have The last two grants have both decreased. And with that said, did it create much of an impact for the Public Safety Department?
Through the chair, no. We make adjustments through the grant application to meet our needs based on the funds that are available.
Thank you. Then, is it correct to say that some of the services may have declined? Through the chair? I'm trying to understand when you said to meet your needs. So there may have been a reduction through the chair.
Through the chair, no.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0278.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0279.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0280.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Legislator Bra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, regarding the fee-for-service amount on the proposed contract or agreement, do we have anticipated revenue based on prior history for the fee-for-services? Through the chair.
Through the chair, John Clark from the Crime Laboratory. No, we don't, but that can be estimated based on prior years' submissions.
Would it be possible to have that prior to the full-fledged meeting? Through the chair.
Through the chair, yes, I could.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0281.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0282.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0283.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Legislator Bra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, if I read this correctly, and I could be wrong, am I correct to read it that DWI offenders are paying the total $300,000 for this, or $313,000 for this, through the chair?
Through the chair, that's correct. What happens is when somebody gets fined for DWI, the money actually, it goes through the state, but then it comes back to the county and supports the entire Stop DWI program. So everything that's done through there is from offender fees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Legislator Cayley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration. When you say all the fees that come from the DWI that go to the state come back through, is that the total amount of what an offender would be charged?
Through the chair, no. You misunderstood. That it should
Okay.
just be the fines that come back because the state does charge some fees as well.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0284.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0285.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Here. Through you to the administration, did the Monroe County Planning Board meet on the 3rd, and if so, what was the result of the vote on this item? Through the chair.
Through the chairman, was the question, did the Monroe County Planning Board vote on this particular item?
Yes, and did they pass it? Through the chair.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that before. Yes, it was discussed at the planning board meeting, and it was approved by the planning board.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0286.
Moved by legislator Ansella, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0288.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0289.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0290.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through you to the administration, have these parcels been signed on yet, through the chair?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Have we already acquired the property interests in these properties through the chair?
We have agreements with 2 of the 3 property owners. We're still negotiating with the 3rd.
Through the chair of the administration, do we anticipate that that will be resolved before the full-fledged meeting?
I would like to say yes, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay. Through the chair of the administration, just so I'm clear, if it is not resolved, by approving this, will the administration have the ability to utilize eminent domain?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Through the chair of the administration, who has not resolved resolved this with you so far? Which of the 3 properties?
Through the chair, the last permanent easement that is needed, that we don't have a signature from, would be from the bays.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, can you give me an idea of what is the nature of the permanent easement we're trying to get from the bays? How much of an imposition is what I'm getting at through the chair?
It's a small easement. I don't have the area readily available.
Well, it does say 1,200 square feet.
Right. All of these easements are out by the culvert that's going to be replaced to have minimal impact on the property overall.
How far, through the chair, how far is their residence, assuming it's a residence, from that area of easement? Approximately.
Through the chair, I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 150 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0291.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barat.
Through the chair of the administration, how many representatives attend a planning committee meeting or committee meeting through the chair?
Through the chair, there are currently 3 municipal reps that attend meetings.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, are they attending different meetings or are they all attending the same meeting?
They all attend different meetings through the chair.
Okay, so they're not doubling up through the chair.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, and then through the chair of the administration, why are we increasing the amount from $63,000 collectively to $85,000 collectively through the chair?
Through the chair, we would like to add another municipal rep to be able to attend more meetings.
So ultimately, through the chair, we're going to be up to 4 reps through the chair?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0292.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0293.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0294.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, why are we reducing the request for this program?
Through the chair, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So this indicates that the contract in the amount of 34408 is an increase of just roughly $5,000. And I'm wondering why we are increasing the services.
Through the chair. The amount of this contract is based on the number of nurses and supervisors that we have active in the program during the contracted period of time projected. And it's a standard kind of calculation done by the National Service Organization. So any increase or decrease is based on our staffing and their expectation of how much support they need to provide for us.
Thank you. And then how many zip codes are represented in this span of service?
Through the chair, our service is for anyone who lives in Monroe County, any zip code.
Thank you. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0295.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Through you to the administration, are these three respondent, or the three people who signing contracts, all renewing, returning providers through the chair?
Through the chair, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The three providers we've identified here, are they all returning providers?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, are they paid on an hourly basis, or are they all paid like equal amounts through the chair?
Through the chair, hourly basis.
Thank you.
Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, through the chair. Who else, did anyone else, other than the contract rewardees, respond to the RFQ?
Through the chair, there were a few other responders, and we will be contracting with them. Those contracts will not come to the legislature for approval because they are each contract is under $20,000.
I gotta laugh at that one. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0296.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0297.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0298.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0299.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, just a quick question as to how many seniors were in the programs last year overall. And if that's not at hand, I can take it in writing.
Through the chair, I do have the numbers for registered clients that were in the program between April 1, 2018 through March 31 of 2019. That totaled 15,816 registered clients. That's for unduplicated services. That does not include services that are provided to folks to go to group sessions where we do not take demographic data.
Thank you, and then you just made me think of another question. Of those 15,000 plus that registered through the chair, would you say that they all ended up participating in your programs, or did some register and not do anything?
Through the chair, the 15,816 all did participate in at least one program or service.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0300.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Oh, yeah.
Just a point of order on this one. As this would require this committee to go into executive session, would it be possible for us to move this to the end of our meeting so that the members of the administration who don't need to be here for this, with the sake of the current hour, can head home after that?
Sure, so, yeah. Is there any objection? Okay. Sure, so what we'll do is we'll move that
To the last item.
to the last item. All right, who was our last person?
So that's still moved by Draw and seconded by Rocco.
Okay.
Next item, referral 19-0301.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Legislator Bra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, given the $4,000 amount of money for these properties, are there any structures on these properties through the chair?
Through the chair, did you ask if there were structures on either one or one specifically?
On either one, through the chair.
The Hurstbourne Road, there are no structures. The Clover Street, there's the remains of a foundation from an old barn.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0302.
Moved by legislator Ansello and seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0303.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0307.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0308.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0309.
Moved by legislator Rockow, seconded by legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying, up. Legislator Barra.
Sorry, was this approved by the planning board through the chair?
Through the chair, yes, it was.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, were the environmental assessments completed?
Through the chair, yes, they were.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0310.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0313.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Taylor. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barra.
Through you to the administration, who in the county will serve on the Workforce Development Board?
Through the chair, the positions are ex officio, so we don't know who's going to fill them now.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't know if we had a person identified.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0314.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Draw. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 19-0315.
Moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Back
Okay.
to referral 19-0300, moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow.
Second. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Just give us a moment.
Alex? Okay, so I'll have the clerk let us know where we're at.
All right, so, back to the main motion, referral 19-0300.
Okay, we have it's been moved by legislator Draw, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any further discussion? We've had our discussion. All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Okay, just bear with me. I've got two more items here. Next item, I just want to thank everyone as being chair of this committee. We have 3 members tonight, and this is their last time they'll be attending with us in Ways and Means. Legislator Cayley, Legislator Draw, and Legislator Rockow. I just want to publicly thank you for your service not only to the Monroe County Legislature, but to the Ways and Means Committee. You all have been outstanding and been a terrific part of our democratic process. Always been professional, always been helpful, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to wish all of you the best of luck on all of your future opportunities. And it has been not only a pleasure for myself, but on behalf of the administration, as well as the other legislators here serving with you. So thank you. And I'll give each legislator, if they have a closing remark, each legislator that is leaving, Josh. Well, I'm going to start with Legislator Cayley. We'll start with the minority leader.
I know, it's been a pleasure on this committee. It's also been a pleasure not sitting as the leader of the committee. Okay? It's nice to sit in the back. I can see whose hands are going up and whose hands might not go up. It's an important job that we've done here. And I thank everyone for the work that they've done.
Thank you. Legislator Draw.
Thank you. Thanks. I was gonna, you kind of stole my thunder there, but as a past chairman of the Ways and Means, I want to thank you, Chairman Delahunty, for your leadership in this very most important committee. We're running this. It's not easy, and I want to thank all my fellow legislators on both sides of the aisle for, I think we work together very well. I also like to thank administration and also our parliamentarian for all this, because I know this is important work, as you said, and this makes us most fiscally responsible, the decisions we make in here for all of our constituents. So I just want to thank you all, and I will miss you all very, very much. Someday I will. But I won't be back. I won't be back. But thank you. Good luck to everyone.
And Legislator Rockow.
I have no comments.
Come on, legislator.
Or I'll save it for public forum.
There being no other matters, the December 5th, 2019 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will be announced. Thank you.